Yeah. It's like what it is, how it affects people.
What's going to happen is today, Monday, and Tuesday, basically, well, we don't have class Monday, do we? Today and Tuesday are basically the same format. I have a little bit of notes and then jam out presentation. Why are you on your phone? When you know I will kill you for it.
Oh.
That's a joke. I wouldn't do that. Anyway, and then you go off and have turkey and stuffing and all that crap, and then we'll come back on that following month. Well, we don't have class Monday, so Tuesday, and then I will then give you an open note online exam on Kia on these topics, medical and global issues, which you will then, I'll give you a couple days to do that. Meanwhile, we'll start the next unit at that time. But I don't want you working on anything over Thanksgiving break. You deserve a break. So you're going to get one whether you like it or not. Okay. Huh? Are you ripping me or saying
No, that was like nice.
Oh, okay. Let's take a look at this strange map. And I want to know, what country is that? But Japan doesn't look like that. It looks like that. Why does Japan look like that? And why, this is South Korea. Why does it look like that? And why does Africa look incredibly skinny? And so does South America. But why does America look like it put on a good 200 pounds? What is going on here? Yes. No. The answer is up there. Anthony.
It's the global hectares per capita. Is it just like who's rich or like?
Not quite, but you're on the right track. The answer is up there.
Oh.
Yes, Emma. It's a consumption map. It shows how much they buy. The fatter you are, the more you buy. We are the fattest country up there. We are the world's leading consumer. Especially when you consider that this thing right, that's Alaska. You have to add that to that porky.
Why is Hawaii so
In
small?
here. Well, it doesn't. I mean, it just shows in visual form who the leading consumers on Earth are. We are the world's largest consumer of stuff. We buy a lot of stuff, which fits in with one of the issues that we're dealing with is globalization. We buy a lot of stuff. And one little fact, who do we buy most of it from?
China.
And that's always the first answer, and it's wrong.
Us.
Us. We buy from us, mostly. Now, we also do buy from China, some stuff, but we buy from Canada, we buy from Mexico. We buy a lot of stuff, and it's because we're a wealthy country. Can't you make a conclusion about the poorest nations on Earth? What are the poorest nations on Earth, generally? African. How do you know that, Ian? Yeah, they don't buy a lot. They don't buy a lot. That's a measure of wealth. Who buys a lot? I mean, think about how do you know who's rich here? Because they have cars and they have boats and they have a big house and they have lots of stuff. Now, that's not necessarily true. There's this theory called the millionaire next door theory, that some of the very people that you think are just regular folk are actually millionaires, but they're wise and frugal with their money. They don't spend it on stuff. They invest it. They put it away, which I would highly recommend. Okay, kind of a fun little map. The reason I'm showing you this is because I reserve the right to, on a future assessment test, put this up there and say, all right, what's the second, give me the second most consumption-heavy nation on Earth.
Japan.
Well, it's actually China. China's bigger than Japan. China. So this actually requires that you know two things. One, how to read a map, but two, where's China? That might be important. Okay. How do you read the map?
Yeah, what do the colors mean? Yeah, I thought that's what it meant.
What it does is it simply identifies the most consumption-heavy nations by color as well as size. So you'll notice the disproportionately fat nations are red.
But China's not red at all.
Correct, because it is not proportionately fat. China's got a lot of people in it. Right? So, yeah, US is fat, but it is also proportionally fat. China is fat, but it is not proportionally fat or per capita fat. You'll understand what I mean in a second. Yeah, people. Okay, here's another map. Right? Look how fat Florida is. This map is a map which measures the amount of money that a nation spends on healthcare. So let's just try this.
Did Africa disappear?
I like the Alaska, it just like blows up.
Yeah,
Okay.
Alaska is right.
According to this map, what nation spends the most on healthcare? The United States does. Okay, now let's try this little skill. Could you do this? What percent of global spending is spent by the United States on healthcare?
25,
How did you do that?
I guessed.
Oh, yes? Russia's that country right there. Okay. I'm telling you, you should be able to figure this out. What percent
You put
of
them all
global spending is by the US? About. Yeah, but how do you do that?
You clump them all together and see what clump it's taking up.
Okay, very good. Don't you look at what percent of the earth is made up of the US?
Yes.
The US, whatever clump of earth is covered by the US is the percent that the US spends on healthcare. And I mean, she threw out 25%, and I actually think that's about right. This light blue color is about 1/4-ish of, it might be more, yeah, it might be more, of the earth. Look at, this is Africa.
The bottom is just South Africa.
That's the country South Africa, you got it. South Africa is the wealthiest, let's see, what does it have here? Yeah, it looks like South Africa is about the wealthiest nation in Africa. Okay, and that would be indicated here as well. Now, you know, you can look at this as a positive or negative. We spend a lot on healthcare. We also happen to have one of the best healthcare systems. That's not easy to say. On Earth, healthcare systems, right? You know, does China, does Canada have an appreciably worse healthcare system? I don't know. This is Germany. That's Germany. There's France. That's Spain. That's Britain. Okay. Eastern Europe doesn't spend much. Middle East is pretty sick. That's India. Little Australia there. So cute. Again, I reserve the right to put a map like this on your assessment, your test, and say, all right, make some conclusions. What can you conclude? And you have to look at the map, and again, you have to know that that's Germany. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would never. Don't say like, well, I think that's Russia. Look it up. You know, kind of line it up and say, well, that's probably not Russia. Russia's over there. What's that glob? That's Japan. Okay. A few more here. You are looking at a map of something called GNP. What the crap is GNP?
Gross national producer.
So close, it's amazing. Okay, it stands for gross national product. Next obvious question. What is gross national product? No, don't go on your phone. You don't need to be on your phone. You were doing well. Stay strong. What is gross national product? Kind of. You don't need to be on your phone either.
What is the question?
Fix it.
What is gross national product?
Hurry up.
We know we do.
You're kidding, right? No, that's not quite right. Come on now. You can do it. You can't do it. Okay, very good. Gross national product. What is it? I cannot believe that a group of seniors, juniors, and sophomores does not know what GNP is. I refuse to believe that.
I've heard of it.
That's good.
Is it how much they produce?
National population.
Population has something to do with it.
Knowing how much these populations spend on products.
We already said what it stands for.
Again, that's really, really close. So I'm going to say that's kind of good enough, right? GNP, gross national product, is the total value of everything a country makes. So it's just a number. And so what happens is at the end of last year, economists said, all right, how much did the US make? How many desks? How many rolls of carpet? How many phones? How many calculators? How many computers? How many cabinets? How many trophies? How many clocks? How many newspapers? How many maps? How many flags? How many everything? How much did the US make? And what was the value of all that stuff? When you add it up, it's a really big number. Last year, it was about $20 trillion. Okay, that number is the United States GNP. Okay, it's just the total value of everything that a country makes. So the larger the number, the wealthier that nation is. Okay, so that's why the US is purple and other nations are purple. But wait, it gets more complicated because this is a map not only of GNP, up here it's GDP, it's the same thing. GNP, GDP, same thing, pretty much. But it's per capita GDP. Now, what does that mean? What do you mean per capita? What does that mean?
The area?
No.
For people?
Well, let me give you an example, and I think this will clarify it pretty well. Let's say that I live in a nation of a grand total of 2 people. I live in it, and Aaron Rodgers. Okay? It's a nation of 2 people. And the per capita, no, the GNP of that nation, 2 people, is 25 million and a little more dollars. Okay? You follow me? 25 million plus a little change. Some of you understand what I'm doing. All right. Would you conclude that, wow, everyone in that nation's rich?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? Now, why though?
Because that's a lot of money.
What's the average amount of wealth about? 12.5 million. You, Ian, how many of you followed his logic? You know what he did. Did anyone get lost there?
Yeah.
Like, what did he do? What did you do? Yeah.
The total amount of GDP was 25 divided by 2.
Here you go. You just figured out the average wealth of each person. That's what per capita GDP is. Per capita GDP is just the gross national product divided by the population. Our GDP last year was about 20 trillion. 20, that's thousand, that's million, that's billion, that's trillion. The total population of the United States is about 350 million. That's thousand, that's million. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oops. Does anyone have a calculator? What is 2 million divided by 35? I'm guessing around 57,000. All right, about 57,000. Which is about right. So you
So
see,
is that how much we spent or how much we made?
you're misunderstanding. It's not how much we spend or make, it's how much each of us is worth.
Oh,
It's just like.
But wait, don't do what I think you're doing. You're making the same mistake. Remember where I live, Rogers Land? And the per capita GDP in Rogers Land is 13 million about. And we all said, wow, everyone in Rogers Land is rich. No, we're not. He is. I'm not. But it looks that way. You understand?
So it's not everyone, it's like.
Not everyone. Well, it just means that there is a lot of wealth in the United States. We are a wealthy nation, but that does not mean everyone is wealthy. Some of us, no, you don't need to be on your phone. You almost did it for a little while. Now just put it back. Now stay strong. It means that there's some really rich people. Like something like, I'm going to show you the stat next week, I think. Like if you took the entire population of the world and you made it 100 people, like 80 of them are Americans, the wealthiest. The wealthiest 100 people, 80 of them are Americans. And then you got some Germans and there's like a Japanese guy in there. That's fun. But if there's a few billionaires, then that offsets the poverty that exists in the United States. There are poor people here, but the per capita GNP skews it so it looks like everyone makes about 60 grand. But that's not true. Some people make several million because they can throw a ball. And others don't make that much, even though they toil for 8 hours a day making you kids learn. I'm okay. Okay. Everyone get it? Per capita GDP is the GNP divided by the population. It gives you a ballpark about the wealth of the nation, but it can be deceiving if you don't understand it. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Uh-huh. I don't know. Okay. Just a few more here and then we'll shift gears. This is a map of European colonialism of Earth for about 500 years. From starting when Columbus sailed across the ocean blue in 1492 and then going to a little while ago. At one point or another, where on Earth did European nations dominate? Everywhere. Well, obviously Europe, right? Right, but I mean outside of Europe. So in blue, in that light blue is where Britain dominated. So the original 13 colonies, Canada, several parts of Africa, India, Australia might, New Zealand, New Guinea. Okay? There was a saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire. Right? It's always daytime somewhere in the British Empire. Okay. The French is green, so you can see the Louisiana Territory, several parts of Africa, Vietnam. Those of you who are in world of conflict, you know that the Vietnam War started for us when the French checked out. So the French were out and we replaced. Okay, so the French dominated. The Spanish, right? That's why Spanish is spoken, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What I really want you to focus on, though, is look at Africa. Look at Africa. Look at the European exploitation of that entire continent. The entire continent was controlled by one European country or another, except mighty Ethiopia. Somehow they repelled any European attempt. Not that they didn't try. Italy invaded Ethiopia in the 1930s and lost. The Ethiopian army, and I'm not kidding here, their main weapon, the yo-yo. That was a weapon. Well, because, think about it, if you have a rock and I have a yo-yo, you throw rock at me and miss, and I throw yo-yo at you and I get another chance. Wah! 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 Right? So the Italians are like, spaghetti, and the Ethiopians are like, walking dog, walking dog. And the Italians would gather like pins, like bowling, and the Ethiopians are like, sweet, and they fall down like pins. Strike! I made part of that up. Okay. Now look at this. Look at Africa, totally exploited by European colonization at one point or another. And now look at this. This is an argument called conflict theory, which we've talked about. Look at the regions that were dominated by European exploitation. And you might ask, like, well, were we exploited? We got out pretty quickly. We were independent before the year 1800. So we checked out of this exploitation. Some of these African nations didn't become independent until like 5 years ago. Probably more than that, but you can put your phone away. You can still keep it away. You don't need to be on your phone. Come on now. No, okay, you got me there. Way to go. Okay, and this shows poor nations. Nations that were exploited by European nations until fairly recently, and now look who's poor. And of course, they line up perfectly. The nations that were colonized and controlled by other nations back in the day are the nations that today are pow. Well, of course they are. They had their wealth taken away from them back during the age of colonization, European colonization, and that's why today they are poor. Their wealth was stripped away. Any of you, is the diamond one in this group? I can't wait to listen to that one. Are you ready? Getting there? Okay. That should be really interesting, right? That's a perfect example. The world's largest deposit of diamonds is in Africa. Well, then why isn't Africa rich? Diamonds are expensive. It's because it's exploited. And I don't want to steal any of your thunder, so I will end it there.
Blood diamonds?
Blood diamonds, exactly. Yep, exactly. Yep, you know what I'm talking about. The South American continent, according to this, is poor. Well, of course it's poor. When it was a Spanish colony, the Spanish raided and took the wealth, whether it was iron ore or trees or gold, and today it's poor. Well, of course it's poor. The wealth was taken away by the Europeans that exploited it. And again, we got out before we were exposed to that form of robbery. Any questions? I'm done. So we can turn this off.
Why is Greenland a third world country?